I could have found a cheap driver that could be the alternative to the big brand names. Today, we're going to find out what it is. So the driver in question today comes from a brand that we have reviewed in the past. Now you might remember the Haywood iron review we did last year, which was a $799 set of irons that were absolutely fantastic. Well, now they have a driver that they're bringing to the market, and we're going to review it and see whether you should be spending your hard-earned on it. Before we do get into the review though, guys, make sure you hit the subscribe button down there. We do loads of reviews like this to help you make better choices when you're buying your next bit of equipment. And the driver in question comes from the same family, and it's quite interesting because the name of it is Driver. Obviously we see things like Stealth, Paradigm, TSR2s, whatever it may be, is where Haywood have just stuck with the Driver is the name, which I kind of like, to be fair. There's sort of nothing big, bold, fancy about the name being backed up by some claim or some marketing spiel. This is the driver and this is what we are going to give you. And true to what we saw from the Haywood irons that we did review, ones that I thought were fantastic, that for the price, $799, roughly £625, looked very much like a big brand manufacturer. They performed like a big brand manufacturer. But is that going to be the case when we see the driver from Haywood? Because it very much follows suit there. But before we get into that, I've headed down to the driver range because I want to just hit this driver. I want to see what it's like. I want to see how it feels, what it looks behind the golf ball, what I'm witnessing just with the naked eye in terms of the performance before we actually put it to the test with some data shortly in this video. I headed down to Trafford Golf Centre where I'll hit some balls just to get an idea, like I say, of how this driver felt out of the box and what I was seeing initially. So we've hit some drives there at the range, and I want to say I feel a little bit underwhelmed, I would say, at the moment. I struck the driver pretty well. Yes, I hovered a little bit out of the centre of the club, but the majority were in those face alignments, which I do think really helped sort of make it stand out really where the middle of the club was. But I tended to get it, pretty central and felt like I hit it pretty decent, but from what I was seeing in terms of the flight, yes, I know it's cold out there, it just felt to me like it wasn't really getting up to the distances that I would want to see. And then also, it didn't feel the most forgiving on the ones that I was just hovering towards the toe or the heel or slightly lower in the face. I just didn't feel like I got the most out of it. So, like I say, I felt a little bit underwhelmed. Behind the golf ball, I think it is probably one of the best looking drivers I've seen. It sits so square, and it looks just like, a real player's driver behind the golf ball. But that initial little hit, having some down at the driving range, and I probably hit 30, 40 golf balls with this driver, I just felt I was going to get more from it. I just thought with the way that it's been built, with the carbon, and then the weighting around the perimeter, the weighting at the back, I just felt like it was going to produce a little bit more. In terms of looks, it's very simplistic and minimalistic, and as you look on their website and they're talking about this, that is what they're sticking to. The ethos of anything that they design is all to be done minimalistically and simplistically. It doesn't need to be over jazzed, over hyped, and you very much get that in this driver head. Carbon on top of the head, which gives it a look of maybe a PXG driver these remind me most of. One of their probably entry-level drivers. It looks very much like one of those. There's not loads of weight on the base of the driver. We are seeing, obviously, the carbon on there. There's no alignment aid on top. There are alignment aids on the face. They have some sort of laser etching dashes that centres the sweet spot of the driver to help you line the golf ball up to the middle of the driver a little bit easier. But overall, it's very, very simplistic in its looks. And also when you sort of read up a little bit about the driver, it's a very similar story. It's not claiming to have the fastest ever ball speeds or the most forgiving driver you will ever hit and the straightest flights. It pretty much lists what we see as we actually look at the driver. It's got a titanium face, it's got a titanium body, it's got a carbon fiber top, a little 15-gram weight at the back to help with the forgiveness, and then some internal channeling to improve the acoustics. And probably for me, as I look down on this driver, I would have to say, because of this sort of minimalistic look about it and the sort of sleek, sporty look with the carbon, I do think it is one of the best looking drivers I think I've seen in a while. I don't know whether it's because I'm bored of maybe seeing all this jazz and all this hype. I think just strip it back and this is the driver. It's got some stuff inside it that we know that's going to hopefully help it. But it looks really good. Also, another touch from Haywood is literally the head cover looks so premium as well. It just screams a bit of premium. The head cover feels great, looks great. The driver looks great. Even when you go into the options that you can upgrade to on this driver, there are some upgrade options for certain shafts and things like that. But it does have a lot of what we see from the premium drivers. We're seeing shafts available from Fujikura. We're seeing shafts available from Mitsubishi. We're seeing shafts available from Project X. Then there's a range of grips that you can choose as well, whether it be Lamkin, Golf Pride, Win, their own Haywood one. You have all these custom build options. Now, like I say, some of them are coming at an extra price, but what we have to remember is that Haywood are a straight-to-consumer brand, so having the option to maybe tweak this driver that you might not be able to try like you would do and get fit for properly at the moment, like you would do maybe your bigger brands, but being able to try it, and they do have some demo programs in place, but knowing that maybe with a tailor-made Callaway, whatever it may be, that you fall into a Project X or a Fuji or Mitsubishi, to have all those options there for me is pretty good. But that being said, we have to take into account, what these drivers cost, because does it mean because it's a cheaper driver, I should expect less? I don't think so. We saw that the irons performed really fantastically last time and, were really, really good and stood up with any big manufacturer. Now, I think it might have just been me, and it will be interesting in a moment when we actually see some data to see where it comes out on the numbers. But price-wise, and there's two options when you do look at price. Firstly, you can actually just buy the head like this. Comes with the adapter for the Haywood driver. So if you have another driver that you really like and there's a shaft maybe that you've upgraded to in your previous driver, you could have that pulled out and actually put into this driver, so you're only actually buying the head, which I think is a pretty cool option because, if you were thinking that some of the shafts do cost quite a few pounds nowadays, it's a good option to actually get a bit of discount by just getting the head, and that comes in at £275. So if you've got a shaft you like, pretty much half of what the big boys are now for just the head. That's looking, like I say, probably one of the best on the market at the moment. If you did want one of the stock shafts and the stock grips, that's coming in at £315. So it still is a saving on the big boys. Not a massive one, not the same sort of bracket as we saw from the irons being, $799 for a set of 40 pitching wedge, and Mizuno or TaylorMade Callaway being about $1,300. It's nearly 50%. You're probably saving round about 70% of the price, one of these, of what a big manufacturer would be. So there are some savings in there, which is great, which you get that premium looking driver and you get a few extra quid in your pocket. But how does it stack up now when we actually put it to the test? I'm going to hit some balls in the studio and see how it aligns, because for me, like I say, at the moment, just a little bit underwhelmed. So we've got some data on this driver, and I'm now happy to say it's actually performed a little bit better than I felt it was doing at the range. In terms of the spin, I thought it was going to come out really low because there were shots at the range that I hit. A, I was struggling to control the curvature on it, and B, like I say, I felt like the distance dropped down a little bit, so I was expecting to see that I wasn't getting the spin and I wasn't getting the launch, hence I wouldn't get my carry. But the actual spin number on average was coming in at 2,760. So pretty good, pretty where we want it to be, maybe a tad lower and it would be about perfect. And then when we get into distance, it's actually come out pretty well. It comes in at 273 yards, and again, I felt like I struck it well throughout the testing when I was collecting the data. My club head speed was ever so slightly down, normally hovering around the 112, 113. I was 111 on this one, but at 273 yards, it's not a million miles away. I would be hoping for round about that 285 average carry for me, so 12 yards shorter. You could argue that maybe put it out of consideration for someone who was looking into buying a new driver, but I'm happy to see when the data came in, it did improve. The dispersion was still a little bit wild. I feel like you have to absolutely nut this driver to get the most out of it. There was a couple that I hit that were around the 295 mark in terms of carry that were hit just a little bit higher on the face above the centre. And those things just went like rockets. So I feel like if you're someone who's going to be looking at this Haywood driver, you probably need to be maybe the mid to low handicapper, and you would probably see the best of it. If you're looking for a forgiving driver, I would say there might be something out there that will probably be a little bit better. But in terms of looks, a very, very good looking driver. Lots of options for you to try at a cheaper price point, but for me, just lacks that little bit of forgiveness for it to be something that you should really consider and maybe knock out some of the big boys. But if they sort that out, who knows? The Haywood driver could be one that we could see in a lot of people's bags. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed this review. Why not check out one of the other ones we've done here, and also subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next video.